Okay, today we're going to be talking about ionic compounds, which you remember is a metal and a nonmetal. Remember, covalent compounds are the ones that have two nonmetals. Covalent compounds are the only ones that you're going to use the Greek prefixes on. So if you start putting a Greek prefix on an ionic compound, it's wrong. Don't do that. You get it marked off. Okay, ionic compounds. So if you're given something like sodium and chlorine, you look on your chart, you see sodium's over in group 1, so you know that it's a metal. Chlorine is over in group 17, so you know that it's a nonmetal. So here's a metal and a nonmetal. And there's only two elements. Remember, if you're more than two elements, it's a polyatomic, and that's the next video. Okay, so what we're doing on this is you write the name of the metal first, and your metal is going to be, almost always is going to be put the first one, and it's going to have a positive charge. So you write down the name of the first one, just like we did in the covalent. So it becomes sodium. And then you write down the name of the second one, changing the ending to IDE, just like we did with the covalents. Now, you look at the metal and you see if it's a transition metal. Remember, your transition metals are in your D block. This right in here. So if it's not in there, it's not a transition metal. If it's not a transition metal, you're done. So NaCl, table salt, is sodium chloride. I know y'all are sitting there wondering what happens when it's a transition metal. I'll tell you that in just a second. Let me give you another one of these. Okay. Write down the name of the metal. You write down the name of the nonmetal, changing the ending to IDE. You look at the metal and you see if it's a transition metal. It's not, so you're done. Aluminum oxide. Now, one with a transition metal. You write down, you start out the same way. You write down the name of the metal, iron. Then you write down the name of the nonmetal, chlorine, changing the ending to IDE. Now you look at it and you see if it's a transition metal. Remember, if it's not a transition metal, at this point in time, you're done. In this case, iron is a transition metal. So this is where you have to remember what your Roman numerals are. You got to figure out what the charge is of iron, because the charge is going to be represented by a Roman numeral. Now, remember, in the last video we did the crossing over. So this had a 1 here, so that would go up here, and that would be your -1. The 3 here came from up here, so that's a +3. Because of that, you know that iron has a charge of +3. The Roman numeral for 3 is that. So now you've got iron 3 chloride, and that's the name of it. That's the way that it works. Let me give you another one of those. Okay? Write down the name of the metal. Write down the name of the nonmetal, changing the ending to IDE. You look at it, is it a transition metal? It is, so we have to figure out what the charge is. Remember, we did the crossing over. So the 1 goes up here. The 2 goes up here. So you know that copper has a charge of +2, So you put the Roman numerals in there, and it becomes copper 2 iodide. Okay? Now, when you're given stuff going the other way, like you're given the when you're doing this, this is where the crossing over comes in. You've got copper here, so you write down copper. You've got iodine here. You know because of this that copper has a +2 charge. You know that iodine, when you look up here, it's in group 17, so it's going to have a -1 charge. Cross them over, and it becomes CuI2. Okay? Let me give you one more of those. We're starting with potassium nitride. Okay, when you've got this, you write down potassium, which is K. Nitride is nitrogen. You get your periodic table. Potassium's here in group 1, so it's going to have a +1 charge. Nitrogen is here, remember 1, 2, 3, 4, -4, -3. So nitrogen's got a -3 charge. Cross them over, it becomes K3N. Okay, that's doing ionic compounds. Next one we're going to do is the polyatomic compounds.